Welcome to the Right to Reason podcast. I'm your host, Robert Stanley. Today we're going to be talking free speech with Alix Jules. Let's get started.
It's the Right to Reason podcast.
This episode of the Right to Reason podcast is brought to you by our patrons and contributors like me. We have all recognized the value of the unrestrained marketplace of ideas and have decided to make a difference. You can make a difference too. Contribute at patreon.com/right and learn more about your right to reason at therighttoreason.com. Your activism is appreciated.
Alix Jules is a writer, activist, and social commentator who typically discusses race, religion, and politics and culture. He's been featured in Ebony Magazine, Time Magazine Online, as a contributor to various books and articles on science, tech, impact of religion, and the African American community. Mr. Jules, so happy to have you here, sir.
Thank you for having me. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, this is cool. Just so the listener knows, we've been talking for a long time already, and I went, whoa, we got to do the show. So, I already got to know this guy, a really cool guy, but something that you said that blew my mind, you said that you had some kind of experience dealing with artificial intelligence. Did I misunderstand that?
No, that's actually the field that I'm in.
What the?
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence, dude?
Cognitive computing, as we rebranded it, cognitive computing, machine learning, and all the orchestration associated with that. That's actually the field that I practice in day to day. And that's actually what kind of got me into skepticism because, of course, hey, what's really interesting? Can I find people that have common interests, common goals, and want to talk science stuff? And that got me on the outskirts of skepticism. I was a big, avid CFI reader, etc., and skeptic. So, yeah.
That is insane. So AI made you an atheist.
No.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but basically it was like Terminator Judgment Day, and then you started working against Christ.
Oh wow. That, AI made me an atheist. That sounds like a great book.
That's a good title.
It really is. Don't send it to Sam Harris to butcher it. Anyway.
AI, maybe an atheist. He'd add in there something about, I don't know, something crazy about. No, you know what? He would add in something about the bell curve. That's what he would do. Yeah. It's a lot of his episodes are about that now. I think just because of the controversy, he saw that that's just good marketing, while it's not necessarily good topics.
I think he's still trying to be right, honestly. I listened to the first episode. I was very unimpressed with the first episode with Murray. And I saw the controversy after that. I know several people reached out to him and said, you should have other people on to talk about that and potentially refute some of the claims that are in the bell curve. I mean, someone reached out to me and I was like, wait, we have books that have done this already. Why are we even talking about it? And I think Sam, and this is just speculation on my part, I think he's still trying to prove himself to be right on the issue. And so he's still, that's why he's still talking about it. Like no one else in academia actually is. And that's the unfortunate thing. He's brought to light a topic that's been fairly dismissed in real academic circles. I mean, we still talk about giftedness, we talk about population changes. There's a huge field, mind, body, health, etc., that really is looking at the whole body experience and what exposures do to intelligence. I mean, we're studying that, but when you take a look at the bell curve itself, the way that it was constructed, the lack of review, the lack of journalistic or peer review that happened before it was published. It wasn't great when it was being written. It wasn't great when it was published. It's been refuted. Why are we still talking about that if we're going to have real conversation about intelligence or what is impacting populations in that might be affecting intelligence? We can talk about it. We can talk about lead poisoning. We can talk about that, absolutely. We can talk about the epigenetic effects of things like lead or poor nutrition, etc. Do those have impacts versus black people with sugar. I mean, I don't know. It's just me. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that would totally deflate his whole thing, as if just somebody was on a show and just said, okay, Sam, yes, if it's true that IQ can actually be categorized in this way based on the melanin in your skin, as wacky as that sounds, if it's true, fine, then let's add it to the science, right? All right, we'll write some articles on it, we'll peer review it all, we'll get it done. Okay, and yes, you can also say whatever you want, you have freedom of speech. Next topic. If they just did that with him, he'd go, oh, well, all right, I don't think any of that shit's true anyway. It's like, neither do we, Sam. Moving on, you know?
Right. But, you know, I think to another point that you're making is there is, especially in various circles, there is a market for these ideas. There's a market for bad ideas. There's a market for racist ideas. And the free market of ideas doesn't always lend itself to, hey, people are going to do or consume the right one, or the better one, or the moral one, or the accurate one. The free market of ideas was at play in Hitler's Germany, and we saw how that turned out. So we humans are flawed. We're biased. We bring these biases to the table in almost every form of decision making, whether it's a cognitive bias or it's a cultural bias that we have. I mean, you can't deny that those are at play. So, yeah, that's the reality of being human.
Well, and everybody leaves out, just to get all political sciencey about it, but the whole point of Murray's book, the dependent variable was, should we give assistance to different races? An extremely racist fucking thing to say right from the start anyway.
Yeah,
but then his independent variable was about the IQ. That was just one of the things that he was using to substantiate his claim. And then everybody's saying, well, can we talk about this? You're saying we can't talk about it? Like, no. He wasn't really talking about it. He was just using that to make his point that we shouldn't be having welfare at all. And it's like everybody skips over the main point of the book.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I kind of want to push a little bit into this topic a little more. I wanted to ask you more about AI, though, because that's something I don't understand. I want to ask you about the atheism movement, your activism stuff. There's just so many topics. I know your time is limited, but just one more thing about this area, because you said, hey, Hitler's Germany had free speech. Look how that turned out. And I'm wondering, do you think that the concept of fight bad speech with better speech, do you feel like that's not good enough?
Oh, no, I don't think that's good enough at all. I don't know that I can offer an alternative, but the idea that you can fight bad speech with better speech is flawed, because how do you define what better speech is? How do you define what bad speech is, or even what hate speech is? That's something that we in the U.S. Very much take for granted, but also it can give rise to some of what we see in terms of fascism. The fact that Fox News is as big as it is. It's amazing because again, we have this premise that we can test, which is good ideas always win. Well, no, they don't. In fact, when you take a look at Fox News versus any of the other news networks, Fox News is massive. In fact, when you take a look at ad revenues that are being generated by Fox News, there's a reason why they continue to dominate the airwaves. And it's not just, you have really racist people out there. No, they've been able to curate and craft this message and make it appealing not just to the consumers, but to advertisers as well, to the point where places like MSNBC have gotten rid of certain newscasters and hosts because it didn't match what Fox was doing. And we saw the same thing with CNN moving to a quote-unquote more centrist view, etc. There's no reason Megyn Kelly should be on anything but Fox News, but we see her on Today, and she's got her own show, etc. So yeah, when we say just have a better argument, well, that's not what's going to do it, because that's not where the driving factor is for why people consume these bad messages in the first place. it really is all about self-interest, and it is a psychological idea. It's like people are always they're going to vote their self-interest. Racism itself isn't about love. It's not about education or hate versus miseducation, because you can have people that love, but still are racist. You can have people that love the other side just as much as they claim to love everyone else, and you'll still have racism. You can have highly educated folk, although the numbers do tend to shift a little bit, highly educated folk, but still have racism. So if it's not love and education that's going to do it, then where does this racist idea, where do these racist claims and messages come from? Well, people consume them because of their own self-interest. So the same thing is very much true about consuming bad or hate speech. It's like I'm going to hear this because it reinforces bad ideas, things that may be repeated in culture, etc. I'm going to consume this, and I'm going to validate what I feel by consuming these, regardless of what may actually be better. So you can't really have that argument. I don't know that there's a better argument, or that we have a better tool for fighting it outside of, the dangerous idea is, well, now you got to legalize it. Well, who gets to legalize that? Who sets that precedent? Are the people in power? Do they get to tell you what hate speech is? And we're already beginning to see some of that with Black extremism on Facebook, etc. It's like, wait a minute, these are people that just say that you shouldn't kill. I mean, same thing with the Black Panthers and move on, etc. Anything that was in resistance of the majority narrative was hate speech. I mean, you have a country that deconstructed and took apart things like organizations like the Black Panther, but the Klan is grown. I mean, so who gets to set those laws? So that's the concern that I have with, okay, now if a great argument doesn't take apart a bad argument or take apart hate speech or bad speech, what do you do? Well, I mean, the answer is be somewhere that you're not the marginalized kid.
We dying over black gold, they harvest in the sand. Presidents living marvelous, they starving in Sudan. It's obvious we walk a blind path to oblivion. The book of Judges, read the scriptures, I'm like Gideon.
Okay, I cannot find one thing wrong with what you said. But Alex, I can tell you that the things you just said, that kind of talk scares the fuck out of me, man.
Of course it does. Of course it does.
And here's why, though. Here's why. Because the whole idea of freedom of speech, the unrestricted marketplace of ideas, is that we have a certain confidence, a certain trust in each other and humanity itself. That you believe in the wisdom of the crowd, as it were, that if we all work together, that we can really make things better. And things are getting better. I mean, you have to think,
I'm gonna pause you right there. I'm gonna pause you right there. So I often say, it's like, the many persons that I deal with are awesome. Persons are great. People tend to suck.
That's fair.
Okay, because what happens when you move from the individual to a group is a completely different dynamic. The influence that others have, the unmitigating or mitigating force that someone has on someone else, is very, very different. So you can have a conversation with someone and they will be great. They'll be one-on-one, awesome. Next thing you know, you're seeing them in the front row of a Trump rally screaming, "Lock her up."
Okay, so crowds are dangerous, but also society working together is the only reason of any of our success as a people. So it's kind of like both things are right. Which that was my problem with, like, right from the start, is while you're talking, I'm getting this uncomfortable feeling. I'm like, whoa, Alex, but I'm thinking, like, I haven't found one thing that he said that's false. Not one fucking thing. But then I don't like it, because if I call it slippery slope. But if I take your theory not even that far, just the next level, then I have to say we need to control what the public hears. Is that crazy to say that?
Oh, wow. Control. I think now you talk about who gets to define that?
Right.
Right, exactly. I mean, because now we're getting to a point of, let's say that yes, you do. I'm not agreeing with this. I'm just let's work.
Yeah, hypothetically.
That we need to control what people are hearing. Well, you kind of have that with Fox News, right? I mean, they're a great example of what state-run media would look like. And I don't want to talk about the corporations and all that right now about corporate media. Let's talk about state-run media. The best analogy that we have right now to what state-run media would look like is literally Fox News. They are an extension of what the president says. It's all about talking points. It's all about his agenda, etc. And that's it. So my question to you is, would you limit what Fox News says? Would you potentially institute a law that says what you must say is now accurate? It can't be opinion piece after opinion piece, and it must have some form of accuracy of, let's say, 95%.
No, I would not limit their ability to say what they want to say. I do think, and maybe this sounds a little fascist in itself, I do think we need to introduce some kind of legislation that allows the public to file civil suits against information agencies that distort the information. If a person can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that a news organization was dishonest to them and didn't retract what they said, I would even take it up to the level of not just dishonest. You don't have to just say something flat out, but manipulative and deceptive in the same way that you can hold an advertisement responsible if it just flat out lies. You can hold a company responsible if they say that their product will do this and then it doesn't do that. Like, they don't go to jail, but you can sue them. And I think maybe we should start suing the news.
That could be interesting. That would be, in fact, what you just said there is exactly. I'm going to tell you that's what the president has actually suggested. Being able to sue.
Now I sound crazy.
Right.
These are hard questions, man. These are really hard questions.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
I think
it's supposed to. It's supposed to be really uncomfortable for you.
Your analogy of Germany's perfect, though, because they were a democracy. Like, we have so much faith in the concept of not just marketplace of ideas, but marketplace of electoral power, of a democracy itself, but they were a democracy and they chose to become fascist. And it's terrifying because that could happen to us. To the banksters, haven't you learned? You protest cops and patrols on the street, but I bought city halls, so I own the police. Email, Facebook, and the shit you tweet on a phone company, so I heard you speaking. My suggestion is no correction, no election, sex with no affection, no invention to benefit the world. A man will exist till I got the money in my hand. What I have found myself reminding people is that wasn't 100 years ago. That wasn't 200 years ago. In fact, 200 some odd years ago. Well, we don't even need to go that far. But the African American Museum opened up, was it a couple of years ago in D.C. And at the opening, there was a daughter of a slave, a woman that was born into slavery, that was there. The daughter. That's how long ago that was. Ruby Bridges, I've said this on a few podcasts. Ruby Bridges is the little girl, 5-year-old girl who was in Louisiana, and that's the one that that painting of her being escorted into school. By she's got like the books in her hand, and there's all those
exactly. Exactly. One of the more transformative meetings that my family has had, meeting celebrities. And my daughter was 5 years old, and we went and we sat, and it was a private event. We got to listen to her speak, and then my daughter's looking at me, and she's like, "Wow, she looks like me," and which was big because she's hearing the story of how white parents were. There's a reason why Ruby had to take a peanut butter and jelly sandwich to school every day for that year that she had, where she was walking in, escorted by the U.S. Marshals. One of those marshals is still alive, I think. Everyone else died. Anyway, but the reason why she had the PB&J was on the way in, I think it was the first or second day of school, one of the marshals overheard the parents saying that they were going to poison that bitch.
Jesus Christ.
We're talking about a 5-year-old girl. We're talking about integration at a school. It didn't mean that discrimination would go away. It just meant that you were now sharing a building with someone. Now, what I remind people is 2 things. The first one is those parents are still alive. That's number one. In fact, I'm not going to say that they're all voters for Trump. I don't know that to be true.
I mean, it's funny, but it's really fucking depressing. Oh.
But what I really, what I took away from that conversation was like, she had just celebrated a birthday, and I'm like, oh my God, you're barely old enough to be my mom. Wow. Barely old enough to be my mom. And so I'm listening to that, and I'm reminded of where we are today, how far we've come, how much past in history that we actually have in this country, the 200 plus the 400 total actually of being here and dealing with and consuming these really racist ideas. And we're so arrogant to believe that in just a few decades that come, when those same people that were consuming this on a daily basis, talking to or threatening a 5-year-old girl with poison, they're gone. Those ideas are gone. They didn't pass those on to their children. Those children may have mitigated some of those ideas over time, but they didn't pass on some of those ideas. I mean, we're talking about people that were seriously thinking about murdering a 5-year-old girl. And we are the same species that built ovens for people, not just enslaved them 200 years ago, 100 some odd years ago. We built ovens. So let's not dismiss, and I'm not saying the evil of humanity. No, it is the capability of humanity, what we are still capable of doing. So don't pat yourself on the back because society has made all of these wonderful advancements and improvements. That's great. But what are we capable of? Have we banished those ideas? Have we banished the causes of those ideas? And in a free market, in a free society, those are always able to flourish again. So I'm not saying limit it, legislate against it. I'm saying be really cognizant of it. Be louder, sometimes that's enough. Be really loud, because drowning out those ideas can sometimes work. It's the tolerance paradox, because once you start to tolerate intolerance will take hold. Tough discussion society needs to have, but don't ignore it. Don't just say, because we're awesome, because we're so damn awesome, it won't happen. Trump wasn't supposed to happen. Trump was not supposed to happen. I went in February 2016. I went to a Trump rally. I guaranteed he was going to win in February of 2016. I joked around on another podcast, making light of the situation. Somewhere, the comment was, we're talking about safe spaces. Mm-hmm. What if white people had their safe spaces? And I said, what do you call Congress? It was the Senate, I think. It was the Senate.
That's very funny.
It's the Senate. It was fun. And then someone called me out on Twitter, and I said, it's kind of true. And then I made a comment about the Republican Party. And they said, well, have you ever been? And it just so happened the very next day I got an invite to the Trump rally in Fort Worth. And I was like, you know what?
My parents went to one, dude. They were so happy. Like they had the red MAGA hats and everything.
Oh yeah. Right.
What is that like?
There was, I don't want to call it a circus. There was a lot of fanfare there. A lot of red, white, and blue. In fact, when I told my friends that I was going to do this, they were like, please don't. I was like, even my conservative friends were like, no, don't do that. I'm like, hold on. You're telling me that it's perfectly safe for a black person to show up, right? So why are you now telling me that you have concern for my life? But I had a friend, I love this thing. I had a friend who said, hey, if you're really going to do this, there's no way I'm letting you go down there alone. And my friend Zach showed up, and he was like, he came in, he's a strong, independent, etc., white, six foot tall, 230 pounds at the time. And he came in dressed as what he thought a Republican would look like. So he had a cowboy hat in Fort Worth, right? Dallas Fort Worth. So it has the cowboy hat on, flannel shirt, blue jeans, boots, the cowboy boots, and with his jeans tucked in, and a red, white, and blue cape around his neck. So he looked like Captain America. I was like, that's what Captain America would look like. And so we're sitting there, just taking it all in. And I said, what's really surprising is the normalcy of all of this. I mean, this isn't the hillbilly backward folk that I expected to see. This is the people that I pass in the street every day in metropolitan, DFW. This is the people at Starbucks. These are the people in stores. This isn't the Walmart folks. No, there's a doctor right there because he's still in his scrubs. There's a surgeon right there. There's those are expensive ass shoes. I don't even know how to pronounce those. $1,200 shoes.
The silent majority.
Right. So I looked at this and I said, wow, this is a cross section of America. White America, but still a cross section of America. I saw old people, young people, kids there, etc. People jumping up and down. And when one of the pieces that I wrote after the fact, I said, outside of the normalcy, this is exactly what I would expect from when just looking at the parents there. This is the kind of crowd that would happily go from church to a picnic lynching and not blink.
That's the impression you got. Standing there amongst all these people, you thought these guys would go from church to a public hanging.
Easy, and not see anything wrong with it.
Fuck. Were you scared at all? like, did you get any kind of racist vibes from anybody?
There were a couple of, so I was black there, and I was like not one of many. In fact, I stood out a lot, which meant that I was probably less of a threat. There were Hispanics there. There were Mexicans, etc. And they, I knew, were a little bit more concerned because there were more of them. It's like, okay, there's one black guy there. What is he going to do? Versus 15, a group of 20 Latinos that are standing there. It's like, that's a real threat because, of course, that's what the narrative is anyway. And there was a little bit of an interruption on the inside. And it was then that I got concerned. He was up on stage, then candidate Trump was on stage, and he's like, look at them, they won't even, look at CNN, they won't turn the camera, they won't turn. I was like, wait a minute, they just panned the camera. What are you saying? They won't pan the camera, blah, blah, blah. And then a group of Latinos just erupted after the fact, and then security just jumped in and escorted them out. And it was at that point where it's like, oh, they're looking at me too. It's time for me to go. That's when I got really concerned. I mean, I was a fly on the wall. I had my camera, and I'm like, I had my press pass at the time. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take pictures and just look like I belong here and whatever. And then that happened. I'm like, it's time to go.
Don't be mad cause I'm doing me better than you doing you. Don't be mad cause I'm doing me better than you doing you. Don't be mad cause I'm doing me better than you doing you. Better than you doing you.
Let me ask you this, because a lot of people will say, hey, look, just because I voted for Trump doesn't mean I hate black people, or doesn't mean I hate Mexicans, or doesn't mean that I hate Arabian people or whatever. And I feel like, I don't know if this is the best strategy for liberal America, for the approaching blue wave, as it were, if we're pointing at somebody and say, because you got that red hat on, you're racist. That seems like not necessarily accurate, A, and B, not a good strategy. I mean, how about that? Like, a lot of the people, I've heard this stat, I don't know how accurate it is, but I heard a lot of the people that voted for Obama that later voted for Trump, or at least some of them, a significant portion of them. I know voting for Obama doesn't mean that's your I'm not racist button, that you get to wear.
But black friend. Yeah, that's just a black friend. That's exactly what that is. Yeah, my daughter. Yeah,
it's black friend.
Hold on. Because I talk about this, and I spend a lot of time in stats because applied physics, numbers, data science. So Kanye, let's talk about what you.
Oh. Kanye.
Let's talk about your strategy, Mr. West.
Let's talk about motherfucking Kanye.
Well, I mean, that's a strategy, right? Stop calling people that wear MAGA hats racist, because when they are racist, Keith Olbermann had this conversation, as well as Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart said, hey, wait. The guy across the street, I know that guy. He's not racist. This is where we get into the persons are really cool, but people suck. Mm-hmm. Because when you look at what motivates people to vote a certain way, so it's about self-interest, what I talked about earlier. And that's a really interesting motivator because, this has been studied like exhaustively. I mean, I'm sure there'll be more, but there were 3 big studies that really spent time talking to Trump supporters. There was regression analysis and whatever. There were 3 big ones. And what did they find? They found that it turns out that race was a huge factor in voting for Donald Trump. And so when we say economic anxiety, it's like, well, was this economic anxiety actually real based on what we saw with the economy? No, but quite often it was what they felt. And they felt as if blacks, Mexicans, immigrants, etc., were taking things away from them. And so that did make them anxious, but it was more race-based than reality-based. Of course, this is exactly what's drummed up on Breitbart and Fox News and the president himself. He's like, I'm going to make America great again. We're going to take back the country. Take back the country from what? I mean, you still have control of the House, right? And at the time, the Senate looked extraordinarily lily white, except for the president, who happened to be black. And then when we take a look at, the majority governors out there, white. I mean, we don't have actual representation that reflects the demographics of society. You would have 13 black senators, regardless of whether they're Republican or not. You should have 13 black senators. Do you? No, not even close. But that's the number that you should have. That's the number for real parity. Same thing with Hispanics, Native Americans, who just had one, I think. The House is a little bit different because of the way that it's cut and districting, etc. But, so there really was no power struggle except for this idea of control. And so the question then becomes, if you saw that as a real issue, like this I've lost control of my government, well, do you not see Barack Obama as someone like you? Oh no, he's different. How is he different? You want to say elite, or maybe he's an elitist, maybe because he's very blue. Well, that's not what the numbers prove out again, because the country, if we take a look at all of it, skews slightly left. So you would think that, okay, even looking at President Obama, who was not a radical leftist, he skewed slightly left, that his policy is exactly what you would like. And then you have someone who, like President Trump, who skews way far right. And now, originally going in, we thought he would skew, he'd be more like Ronald Reagan, like, no, he's way far right, white nationalists, etc. But including his fiscal policies. Isolationism is not a moderate or slightly right idea. So when you start removing all of these other variables, the question is, was race and racism the motivating factor in voting a certain way? And it's like, well, let's rephrase that question or rephrase that statement. It's like, as a white person, did you fear losing more power because you saw a changing demographic? The answer is yes. So you do support the idea of, and I'm colloquially saying it, white supremacy. And not as in white supremacist ideas, but as in the color white, which you know that you're buying into is supreme or is more superior than others. And the answer to that is almost a resounding yes. Now, does buying into that idea make you racist? So let's ask that question right there.
That is a good question. Does buying into that make you racist? Or is it just somebody saying, I want to protect my culture?
That's a good question. What is it? Then what's white culture? I thought we were talking about being American. And isn't America this idea of a melting pot and immigrants? And can't we all just get along? And etc. Is that not what American culture is, or are we talking about something else? Because if it's not that, if it's not what's in the history books, if it's not the narrative that we've had for 200 years, minus the slavery, if that's not the narrative and we cut it away, the culture becomes white supremacy. So what are you talking about protecting? Are you talking about protecting your culture and its status? And if we're talking about protecting its status, because nobody's messing with your culture. Nobody's telling you that you can't wear a Confederate flag. You can't have a Confederate flag or a Confederate flag on your property. We're saying that you can't have it in the public square. We're saying that taxes shouldn't go to it. What is it of your culture that you're trying to protect? Isn't Obama part of your history now? I mean, you want to claim it. You immediately want to claim it. It's like, I'm not racist because I voted for Obama. Okay, so you're okay spending your taxes to rename I-45, blah, 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 in downtown Dallas to Obama Court or whatever? No, I'm not. My taxes are, okay. But you're not going to touch that Confederate monument. Okay, so what exactly is it that you're protecting? The status.
That's a good question.
I mean, it almost always goes back to it, and it's hard because it always goes back to white supremacy, your status in believing who you are, and it is tribalism, but it's a little bit more complicated than just straight tribalism, because it's really tied to majority power, so ethno-majority power in this particular case. But it's not something that is really unique to the U.S. This is what we see in a lot of different places with the majority, and this is where I say people suck. Persons are awesome, people suck. Once the majority takes advantage, they often do take advantage of the minority. And we don't just see this in the U.S., although it feels really bad here, right? And I remind people, it's like, as racist as it is, we're still very pluralistic. I mean, we're right now is a scary time, and the future could be really terrifying for a lot of people. But I mean, if you take a look at what has happened, when I'm talking about just caging people, and this is this is very relative, and I don't want to make light of it, but we're caging kids, we're separating people here, etc. They're literally killing people overseas, right? I mean, the majority is exterminating. I mean, real genocide that has happened, majority versus the minority. So as tenuous as this is, as disgusting as it is, that we're seeing a lot of the illusions that people have of what civil society in America or Western society in America look like. We upended what we thought, this wonderful veneer that we've had of, hey, it's America, it's the greatest nation on earth, and we accept everyone, and blah, 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 blah. It's like, are you really? Do you? And I think a lot of liberals got a big eye-opening surprise November 2016, yeah. this is not unique to us. It happens elsewhere, and we're gonna have to keep working this out.
Oh, just hold on, we're going home. Just hold on, we're going home. It's hard to do these things alone.
I had a racist fascist debate on my show recently, and this guy, he didn't hold back. Like, he was a real racist and he was a real fascist. Like, it blew my mind because at one point I said, I asked him, I said, hey, if your wife turned black, because I was trying to go the love angle, you know what I mean? I was really pushing the, like, come on, you know, love wins, that kind of thing. And I was trying to reason with him there, and I said, if your wife turned black and she was pregnant with this child, if your wife turned black, would you leave her? And he went silent for a minute, and I didn't truncate silence. I didn't edit anything. I just let it ride, just because I thought this is important. People need to hear that. At least that made him think. Unfortunately, though, his answer is, yeah, I'd leave her and the baby inside her. And yeah, it broke my heart to even hear that someone could be that fucked up. You know what I mean? But his defense is, well, what's wrong with wanting my baby to look like me? And I said, that there's nothing wrong with that, I guess. But I think where we see a similarity between that very extreme level of racism and maybe a more institutionalized, somewhat elusive, but still effective level of racism that you're referring to is, I think whenever a lot of white America looks around their neighborhood or looks around their country or flips channels on their TV and they're flipping past BET, you know what I mean? I think something that pops in their head is they say, what's wrong with me wanting my country to look like me?
Well, I guess the first question is, how do you define your country? And how do you separate your country from your country's past? I didn't ask to be here. I mean, your ancestors forcibly brought my ancestors here. So, I mean, first there's that reckoning. And I know you can say that, well, my mother didn't have a slave. Okay, fine. But your country benefited financially. And I don't remember what the number is, but it's billions of dollars in initial seed investing in the American country is how you know, if America was a startup, black bodies was the investment. We were the seed funding. I'm not gonna use angel investing. We were the seedling. We were the seed investors to the American ideals, to the American country, what eventually became the American economy. It very much was built on a slave economy. We can't dismiss that. So if you want your country to look like that, I mean, your ancestors had an opportunity to remedy that many times. In fact, you know, if you take a look at Lincoln, when he freed the slave, he was like, you know, now we have an issue. What do I do with the freed slaves? I mean, really, do we just pick them up and just send them back? Is it really 40 acres and a mule? I mean, what kind of reparations, if any, do we give them to get them out of here or out of our hair and just call things square? Well, the country never did that. Not only did it not do that, it doubled down in many other instances with Jim Crow and redlining, etc. So, and the redlining piece is something that people often don't know about. And this is where we take a look at how white Americans got their wealth and were able to, you know, push their wealth to their relatives, their descendants, etc. And that was completely omitted from the black experience because you're stuck in ghetto and you legally cannot leave the ghetto. And this really didn't end, and someone will tell you it never ended, but the zoning laws in Brooklyn, Queens, etc. I mean, these fights are still going on today. I remember the HUD lawsuits back in the 80s against Ronald Reagan, trying to, hey, you need to do something about that. In fact, your president, you know, he was implicated and sued for discriminatory practices when it came to renting. I mean, so yeah, I understand that you're saying that you want your country to look like you, and that's fine, but then it should reflect the demographic, which means that if you have 100 channels, 13 of them should be black, and you should be okay with that, right? At least, I mean, if we're just doing the numbers game, right? But
at
you
a
see
minimum.
the one, at a minimum. But you see that, and any of that is an encroachment on your status, on your stature as a white person in America. So you are not, it's not even being empathetic. You're not taking any of the actual context into your reality. You're not incorporating any of that.
I agree with you. Like, nobody expected Trump. Like, nobody expected this to really happen, but nobody except you, Alex. Really expected
a lot of black people there. Well, I mean, it's the SNL skit. But you know, after the election, even with it was with Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock, and you know, you have two minorities standing there watching their liberal friends be like, oh no. Michigan was still flipped. Pennsylvania, no, they haven't called that yet. And like, who's like, yeah, that won't happen. It's like, of course, because I don't want to say you disappointed. You let the country down before.
Well, I'll tell you where I bet you didn't even expect it, though, was within our own secular movement.
Of course I did.
Come on.
Of course I did.
Like
Absolutely.
all this Memphis, Milwaukee bullshit, like all that kind of stuff. Like none of this shit surprised you, man.
No, none of it surprised me because I think when I came into skepticism or in the atheist movement, I decided that I was going to take the family to Skepticon, and we go there. And I think it was Skepticon 3. And I go there, and Blair walks up to me and he's like, hey, mind if I ask you a question? And I'm like, God, I know what this question is. But he's like, and he looks at me like, so you're black, right? And I'm laughing.
Well, dude, that's perfect for the thing.
I'm laughing like, yeah, what else? I'm black. And he's like, why do I see so few black people here? And we started having a conversation. And he says, I'm the communications director for American Atheist. Is it okay if I go grab a microphone and, we just start recording some of this? Because I think this is an interesting topic. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's I'll pull up a chair and we talk. And we talked for what felt like hours. I don't know how much of it actually made it onto the podcast itself, but we talked for hours. And after that, or during that conversation,
that was a video, right? Like it was just the two of you.
Yeah.
I think I saw that.
It was a while ago. Yeah.
I think I saw it.
Yeah. And there was some video, and there was also the podcast version, and we chatted. And immediately after that, he was like, "Hey, I've got this idea. I want to have this is him. He's like, I have this idea. I want to do a black or an African American edition of American Atheist magazine, but I don't know if I could get enough black atheists interested in doing it and blah blah blah." And I was like, "Dude, I'm going to twist your arm because I think there are more than enough out there." Of course, Debbie Goddard, Sidney Lou Hutchinson, Anthony Penn was on the cover. I said, "Dude, I will write as many pieces as you need under pseudonyms if you want." And he said, "Are you sure?" I was like,
you just walk in with like a different name badge on. They're like, "Hey, Alex." You're like, "Excuse me, it's not Alex. That's my name, sir."
Yes, it's Alejandro. There we go. And so we were having. I convinced him he was going to do this. Yes. And then it must have been a couple of weeks later, because it was November when this happened. And then we're getting into the Christmas, into January season, and he and I are still messaging. It's like, I'm still having a little trouble, and I want to put this out in February. And I guess he had a conversation with Religious Network News, I think it was Kim Winston, that reached out to me, and she reached out to me. And we're having a conversation about why it's so hard for someone to come out there. She goes and she talks to Debbie Goddard, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't too far after that my name was on the internet. And as soon as my name was on it, literally at one point when I first started this, if you put the words Black Atheist out there, even though I knew Black Atheists, some of them like Norm Allen, etc., he called himself a humanist. So it just so happened that when you put Black Atheist out there at that point, the first name that came up was mine. So Google clicked, the first one was, that particular article, and it was Alix Jules. And that wound up being a way for other people in media to contact me. So many articles came from that one little conversation that I had with Blair. And so Blair gave me my first microphone, my first open microphone into talking to the rest of the world. My friend, Dr. Zachary Moore, gave me he boosted me enough to have enough of a platform here locally in Dallas. He was the coordinator for the Coalition of Reason. I'm a big UCOR supporter, but yeah, he was like, hey, I've been doing this thing with all of these skeptic and atheist groups here locally. I want you to get involved. And I'm like, yes, I'll get involved, and yes, I will talk, and etc. So locally was Zach, and then almost internationally overnight was Blair.
All right, I'm gonna Google Black Atheist.
I think I'm on page 11. Last time I checked, I'm on.
Still pretty good. Well, actually, you know what? You're still on there though. You under Google image, for some reason it's got an image of Steve Harvey. It's got Sam Jackson. It's got Chris Rock, and you're not too far right behind it. It says Alix Jules.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Why is Steve Harvey even on this thing at all?
Because Steve. Okay, I'm not going to get into this story, but Steve Harvey was local here in Dallas. So is T.D. Jakes. And I am in Dallas, and so I will occasionally make a statement, and it'll go out there into the press, and either be someone was sitting in the audience. It might even be a journalist, and then I'll say something, and I'm not a fan of Steve Harvey. And I've made comments and presentations about Steve, or that included Steve and other Black ministers, and I guess other Black ministers, because he's just about. So, yeah.
So
it doesn't surprise me that my name comes up with Steve Harvey, or many of the others. Yeah.
And Kanye made it on there somehow, but I don't know.
Because Kanye calls himself a free thinker now.
Yeah, free enough to put a MAGA.
He doesn't know what the term means. Is exactly what that is.
Yeah, I'm glad you said free thinking, because I wanted to bring it right back to it. You saw within the free thinking community this hint of maybe not blatant racism or something, but you saw this division coming at least.
Well, yeah, because as I got out there and I left my community, I got to see that people that didn't call themselves humanists and just called themselves atheists, even humanists as well, but people that I'm just an atheist, I don't know, there's a much bigger group out there that calls itself as atheists. In fact, there are people out there who don't subscribe to what atheism is, and they are atheists. Or there's a massive amount of people out there who don't listen to podcasts, don't join groups, and I'd say that that's the majority of atheists out there, still today. They just exist, and they just are. And my question then becomes, or I ask myself, what makes these people different? What makes atheism magic? What begins to shield people from the cultural norms and some of the indoctrination and the cultural biases that they get from just existing, right? Just because you're an atheist doesn't mean that you can't be sexist. Well, no, that's ridiculous. Just because you're an atheist, you can't be racist. Well, that's definitely ridiculous. So I actually said very early that as atheism becomes more mainstream, and you get other people out there who aren't liberally skewed and the super ideological progressives or just libertarian in their views, because we do have a lot of libertarians as well.
Yeah, that one's weird.
That can be weird. I mean, the very first meeting that I sat next to a Republican atheist. I was like, oh, they make that model. Yeah, they make that model, and they're out there. So all atheism was a removement of this idea of God. And so, okay, so everything else can exist. And so once you strip that away, you can say that this movement can be just like any other movement. And it's kind of a special interest group. And their interest is removing, and even there, it's like, can you really get a true, pure definition of what atheism is? We know what it is, but it's like, okay, what are the goals? No, there are no goals. We just stated. So separation of church and state, that's the most common, right? That's the most common. But then you still have a subsection of the group that says, no, live and let live. But we gotta say separation of church and state, and that may be the only thing that binds us. So I know that sounds terrible, because it's like, what happened to my movement? What happened to my movement? What happened to your country? It's the same question. It really is. You're waking up to this movement and this country is what you make of it. So the question that I ask you, what are you going to do with it? I gave you one idea. Be visible, be present, be loud. Don't just counter those ideas. Be there.
More stacks off these tracks, I keep ripping. Cold black certain packs and keep pimping. Gangsta stones to bloods, now he's tripping. Niggas viewing death as a lifestyle.
Alex, thank you so much for talking to us today, man. You've given me a lot to think about, dude. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. If anybody wanted to learn more about you, see some of your talk, I would really encourage anybody listening, just pull this guy up on YouTube and watch some of his talks. You'll really find that to be a valuable use of your time. But anyway, Alex, where can people learn more about you and hear more about you?
The Thinking Atheist YouTube interview that I gave is probably one of my favorite ones.
Yeah.
This one was fun too, but if anybody wants to...
This one was fun too. But no, I agree. I remember that interview. It was great.
Yeah, that was, yeah. Seth got a lot of shit for it too. I was like, really? Yeah, and so did I. Holy crap, did I get a lot of shit for it. But anyway, if people are trying to, you can, I am almost always at my friends limit on Facebook, but please follow. Like 95% of what I say is public. So if you follow, you'll be able to see it, etc. You can always send a friend request, and if something opens up, I'll try.
You can only do what you can do with Facebook, though. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's Alix331 on Twitter. So when I am on Twitter, you can find me there. You can still find some of my work on both the Orbit and on Patheos, although I'm taking a little bit of a blog writing break because I'm working on a couple of other projects with people. So,
like artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Elon Musk was right? They're all going to kill us, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm creating a social justice bot. There you go.
And it's Slack.
Yeah, it's Slack.
Before you go, man, AI, is it going to kill us, yes or no?
I'm working on it.
All right. It's only going to target people with MAGA hats.
Yes, and no. If you believe where Ray Kurzweil is pointing the singularity potentially happening, yes, possibly. If it actually becomes sentient, then possibly. But there's a lot of really good science out there that shows that consciousness takes more than just neurons, and even if it's a biological byproduct that just happened to happen because we are human, replicating that or duplicating that into artificial intelligence machines, not impossible. It just may be a little bit further down the pipe than you think. Would it? Could it? How efficient are we? How are we going to treat them? I hope we treat them better than sometimes we treat ourselves, or others. But hopefully, by the time that we have to ask that question, we've answered our own moral.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to writer, activist, social commentator, and artificial intelligence expert, Alix Jules. Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
I really enjoyed talking to Alix. Thank you to Dave Blair at davefreesong.com/free music. Thank you to our patrons. You too can support us at patreon.com/right and learn more at therighttoreason.com. Next week, we're going to be debating mythicism. We're bringing back two friends of the podcast, author David Fitzgerald and Christian apologist Kelly Clemenson. That's going to be a lot of fun, and that's going to be next week. Between now and then, remember that you have the right to reason.
This is street radio for unsung hero. Riding in the Rego, trying to stay legal. My daughter found Nemo, I found a new primo. Yeah, you know how we do. We do it for the people and the struggle of the brothers and the folks. The lovers of the dope. Experiment to discover hope. Scuffle for no.
So let's ask that question right there.
That is a good question. Does buying into that make you racist, or is it just somebody saying I want to protect my culture? Did I sidewinder that too much?
I was like, what's?
I don't know. I was just trying to give you a good segue.
I don't know. What's my culture?
Okay, our audio's good.
Thank you.
Tell me what to say next.
No. I got it. You good. You should leave that in there, by the way. Tell me what to say. No, I got it.
Tell me what to say.
This is street radio for unsung hero. Riding in the Rego, trying to stay legal. My daughter found Nemo.
We got so off track, and if I was any good at my job, I would know how to get us back.
I'm gonna give you a second because I think you can.
All right. Let me try here.
I was the king of segues, man.
No. We got it right here with the free thinker. So as far as free thinkers go, I'm glad you brought that up, Alix. I don't know. It was a good. Let me try it.
That's good enough. No. That's good enough. That's good enough. The audience will have you.
No, let me do it again. No, it was a good idea. I just didn't have the.
Oh, you got the giggles.
Yeah, what's a good? Okay, after free thinker, what do we do? Come on, Mr. Segway King. Where do I go after that?
I don't know where you wanted to go. I mean, where do you want to go? I hope you get there.
I just want to bring up free thinking, atheism. Get off the black stuff.
Okay.
I don't want to say it like that.
Right. Yeah, so we gotta get back.
Stuff. Listen, I want to.
We gotta get
like
back.
Patreon immediately defunded. No, I didn't mean it like that. No. I have a black friend.
We have to. That's racist. We gotta go from here. So you gotta go from here back to so that's free thinking, and that's how you got in there. But did you see this? No, you got to get me back to your original question, which was, so you saw this in the community. You've been out there in the community, and you told me how you got there, but you still claim that you see that.
I got it. Okay. Thanks for doing my fucking job for me.
Hey, wait.
All right, here we go.
About the people.